In this video, I will give a detailed review of this particular three-dimensional background. We'll look at the manufacturer, the cost of a background like this, the shipping, installation, and some of the difficulties I ran into there, and then kind of an overall pros and cons of three-dimensional backgrounds in general, and this one in particular. The manufacturer of this background is a company named Nature Decor. They have several sister companies, or two sister companies that are older by the name of Terra Decor and Aqua Decor. And so Nature Decor kind of combines combines the features of their sister companies, and they produce high quality three-dimensional backgrounds, predominantly rockscapes, although they do offer a couple other types of backgrounds too that you can check out on their website. And I'll include a link to all these products or things we're talking about below in the description. The cost of this background is certainly not cheap, and so it's not something that you're going to use for a budget build or if you're in a hurry. This background here costs about $450. This is a 125-gallon aquarium, so obviously cost varies with size. So if you have a smaller aquarium you want to use something like this in, it's going to be cheaper. And then obviously if you have a really large aquarium, it's going to be more expensive. But the $450 included shipping, and it also includes kind of all the custom features to the background. So not just the color that you get to choose, but also they fit this background, they custom make it around, or cut it to be around overflow boxes or plumbing or heaters, anything that you need hidden. And so in this aquarium here, the only two things I have in the main tank are two large overflow boxes that are pretty ugly, and so that was the reason behind this background, was to hide those to the best of the ability, and I think that works really well for that. And so as far as the shipping goes, this is again not a feature that you want to put in your aquarium if you're in a hurry. If you're trying to put a tank together within a week or two, this is not for you. The process, because it's custom made, it takes quite a while to make it, to paint it, to ship it to you. And so this background for me took about 6 weeks or so to get. I think they probably usually get it within 4 weeks, but mine had an issue in production where they didn't like the way the paint looked, and so they sent it back through and had it repainted. And so I think that in some ways that speaks to the positive side of this company, that they are worried about the product and its appearance, and they have certain qualities and standards that need to be met before they'll ship it. And so I'm certainly pleased with the look of it. I think it looks exactly what I pictured when I was talking to them by email. And so that part of it is perfect. The one thing I didn't expect was the shipment came from Serbia, and so the company is based in Canada, but apparently I guess these are made overseas and then shipped from Europe to the States or Canada or wherever you're purchasing it from. And so it does take longer because it has to go through customs and it has to ship from overseas. But in the end, I think that if you're building an aquarium or putting an aquarium together that's going to last for years, then you shouldn't be in a hurry to do it. And this allows you to get kind of everything squared away, as far as filtration and heating and lighting and all these things go. So that way, when the aquarium gets here or the background gets here, you have it all kind of figured out, and there's no mistakes made. The background itself, this one in particular, came in 6 pieces, and that allows you to fit it through the bracing in the aquarium. And it kind of fits together like a puzzle, and the seams for where this came together are very well hidden. It's essentially impossible to tell what's cuts in the rock and what's the seams, and so that part of it works really well. I would, as far as the process of ordering and putting it together goes, I'll talk a little bit about this here again in a second, but I would highly or strongly recommend that when you give dimensions for the aquarium, because they're going to custom build this for your particular setup, that you make sure you overestimate the sizes of things like the overflow boxes. They build this exactly to the numbers you give them, and so if you are telling them that you have a 6-inch deep overflow box, it's going to be exactly that. And so what happened was, when I got mine, it was built to perfect spec, but when I went to put it in the aquarium, there were a couple pieces that did not seat up completely against the back glass. And so when you go to actually install this, you have to put silicone on those areas. And if it's not touching, if there's a gap of an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch, then that makes it real difficult to attach this. And we'll talk about that here in a second. And so we'll talk some on the installation process now. And this is kind of a combination video that looks at a review plus the whole installation. And I think the installation part is very important. And although it may be kind of more boring side of it, I think that if you are thinking about purchasing one of these, that it's an important part to discuss. These are made out of a high density styrofoam, and so when you're trying to put these underwater, it requires really solid seals to keep it from really solid adhesives to keep it from coming loose and floating to the top. And so when I got this, I had had talked about earlier that several pieces did not seat completely against the glass, and there was a good eighth or quarter inch between the piece and the back of the glass. And so when it arrived, unfortunately, it did not have any instructions with it. And so I was able to find some recommendations on the Aqua Decor site for installing it. And so I tried to follow that to the best of my ability, using a lot of silicone, put it in the back, let it cure for about 48 hours, and then put water in it. And unfortunately, the pieces that did not touch the back of the glass did not hold and came loose when there's about 3/4 of the tank full. And so then you're left with a tank that has roughly 90 gallons of water in it, and backgrounds that are pushed up against the bracing and damaging the background, those types of things. And so it's very frustrating, clearly. So I had to empty out the entire aquarium, dry it out, dry the pieces, and this took a good 5 to 7 days to get all that completely dry so that I could put it back in the aquarium and try again. And the second go around, I decided that I needed to use something that probably had a stronger bond than the silicone could do. And I went with a couple different products. I used, the one I'd strongly recommend is a product from JB Weld called Water Weld. And then I also used, surprisingly, some Flex Seal. And the Flex Seal worked really well. I had my doubts, things that are seen on TV and all this, I wasn't real confident in, but I allowed it to cure for a couple days, and between the JB Weld and the Flex Seal, it seemed to work significantly better than the silicone. That being said, I think that if you gave a little bit of grace, to the measurements and the pieces of the aquarium, pieces of this background, fit up against the glass like they're supposed to, then you probably could get away with using silicone like the manufacturer recommends. But if I was to buy another one of these backgrounds and build a bigger aquarium again, I would be using the JB Weld and the Flex Seal like I did here, because they seem to work so well. Both those are drinking water safe, and so I didn't really have any concern putting them in the aquarium. The final, I guess, to drive it home, I would just strongly recommend that you give grace, like a grace measurement. So if you have a 6-inch overflow box, call it 6 1/4 at least, if not 6 1/2, so that you have some space to maneuver around. I'd also, I'd overestimate the length of the aquarium and the height. So even if you have just maybe a little bit of a gap between the end of your background on the aquarium, it's better than having it be too tight, because if you give them an exact measurement again, they're going to build it exactly to that measurement, and so it may have difficulty fitting in exactly how you pictured it. So I'd overestimate those things, and I think you'll find that it would fit better for you, and you'd have an easier time with the installation. And so finally, I'll touch on the pros and cons, an overall summary for the video. I think the pros are pretty obvious. You're buying a background like this because you want to look as good as possible. So you're trying to hide plumbing, you're trying to hide overflow boxes, and you want the aquarium to look like a zoo exhibit, essentially. And I think that's what this accomplishes. The background is excellent. As far as the construction goes, it's excellent. It looks great. I think it actually looks better in person than it does on this video. The colors are better in person than they are in the video. And so I have nothing but positives to say with the look of the background. And in the end, I would certainly do this again, because I think that it adds so much detail to the aquarium. The other pros are that it hides your plumbing, it hides filtration, and hides heaters. It can be custom built to exactly what you're looking for your particular setup, and that's a great feature. And finally, I think that another pro is that it provides crevices and hiding spots for the fish, just like it would if you were stacking cobblestone in the aquarium. The only difference is, at least in my opinion, this is far better looking than stacking cobblestone for an African cichlid aquarium. The cons, it's not cheap, so if you're on a budget build, you're not going to want to spend $450 on a background. But if you have a little bit of extra money, I would jump at this. I think that it's even better if you had a choice between buying a 125-gallon aquarium or buying a 90-gallon aquarium and using the extra money to put towards a background. I would recommend doing that. I think that the background adds so much detail to this aquarium or to this setup that it's actually worth it in that sense as well. A con is that it must be carefully installed. I don't know that that's as much as a con as it is just a word of caution. So you just have to know what you're getting into, and take your time with installing it, and then it's worth it in the end. But I would certainly do some of the recommendations I made earlier when ordering it. It does take up space, and so I think one con is that when it's all said and done, that this is taking up volume in the aquarium. So it's no longer a 125-gallon aquarium. I don't know what the actual gallons is now with the background in place, but I'm going to guess it probably reduces it by at least 20 gallons, if not 30. And so it's probably more like a 90-gallon aquarium at this point. But to me, that's okay. I think that there's plenty of depth to the aquarium. The fish have plenty of room to swim. As you can see, there's a lot of fish in that aquarium. I think that it's definitely worth taking up some space to hide all those unattractive features, like the giant overflow boxes that were here. And then the final con that I would point out is, again, the amount of time it takes to make and ship. So 4 to 6 weeks is quite a while, and even though it's custom built, you kind of wish that it would be a little quicker than that. However, although I was growing a little bit impatient by the time it arrived, I think that it was worth the wait. So in the end, after all the struggle of getting it installed properly and then waiting that 6 weeks to get it, I think in the end it was definitely worth it. So as far as the construction goes, the look, I think in the end I would definitely encourage you to at least consider a three-dimensional background in this particular company if you're in the market. And so I would recommend it, and I think it would add a lot to your aquarium. Again, if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them below, and I'll try to get back to you. I'll post links to some of the materials I talked about in here, like the adhesives and the manufacturer of this background. I'll give you the actual specific names. If you like the background, this exact background, I'll give you the model number for it so you can see it on their website. And then please don't forget to rate and subscribe, and I'll try to keep coming out with videos every few weeks or so. Thanks again.